Right. So it's my pleasure to introduce Werner, DJ9KH. He's been licensed since 1963. He's a retired secondary school maths and chemistry teacher. And since 1972, he's done over 20 DXpeditions to places like Manakiki, which is in North Cook, Easter Island, Ascension, Marshall Islands. He's active in contests, mainly CW and SSB. And when he's not doing that, he's doing what a lot of us do, which is playing with antennas. The talk he's going to give today is a fascinating one, because not so much just what he did, but when he did it. But I'll leave that to you. So over to you, Werner, and welcome.
Yeah, very good morning, XYLs, OMs, participants of the convention. I'm Werner, DJ9 Kilo Hotel, as you have heard. I'm one of the members of the 2020 Kosovo expedition. First, I have to thank you for the invitation to attend the RSGB convention this year. I would have liked to appear in person with you, but the fact that the start of our P29RO expedition will be in a few days caused me to decide for this online presentation. And thank you very much for the technical assistance. It's a very new media for me. So sorry that I can't be with you, but my team members said no risk. We paid a lot of money already for the new expedition. So before I start, I should mention that I have been near your convention location some years ago when Martin G3ZIY brought us on the right way to Bryce Norton, where we started our ZD8 expedition. He showed us Bletchley Park, which is, I think, in the neighborhood, and of course the club station GB3RS. Thank you again, Martin. Hope you are fine. The headline of our expedition was Zulu 66 Delta X-ray activating Kosovo under special circumstances. Well, it was in December 2019 when Wolf DM2AOJ and Günther DL2AWG, both experienced DX operators, had the idea to activate the Republic of Kosovo. Both collected information, established ties with helpful hams around Europe, and discussed the plans and the chances to realize them with me and others. The Republic of Kosovo is situated in the southeast of Europe, has 1.9 million inhabitants, and was a part of the former Socialistic Republic of Yugoslavia. 2008, the Kosovo declared himself as an independent state and is in the meantime recognized by 98 out of 193 states of the United Nations. Why Kosovo? Well, there were not too many expeditions to the Kosovo in the past. The activity of the local hams is quite limited, and it's easy to reach. There are daily flights from Western Europe to the capital, Pristina. And third, the ranking on the most wanted list was quite okay. So good reasons to begin with the planning steps. Wolf and Günther contacted the local hams and the radio club and rented a house outside of Pristina for 2 weeks in October 2020. They applied for license with the Kosovo authorities and received the permission with a special call sign Zulu 66 Delta X-ray after a few weeks without great bureaucracy. The team of 6 operators was completed with DL2AMD, DJ9 Kilo Hotel, DL3APO, and DL9 GFB. Well, everything looked well so far. No idea about Corona. At that time, we didn't even know the words Corona or COVID-19. But just a few weeks later, the situation around the globe had changed dramatically, as we all know. When we returned from our El Salvador HU1DL activation in February 15th, we were faced with the Corona lockdown. Most of the announced expeditions in 2020 had to be cancelled. And of course, we ask ourselves, shall we do it or not? Well, 8 months to go, and who knows at that time how the pandemic situation would develop. With a lot of optimism in the background, we decided to follow our plans, always having in mind that we wouldn't lose too much money if we should have to cancel the expedition in October. So we followed our plans, even though we couldn't meet each other personally. The intensive communication via internet led us to our main targets. 30,000 QSOs with 6 operators manning 3 to 4 stations, 24 hours daily. Well, a little bit ambitious under the sunspot situation at that time, with 6 operators only. The Corona lockdown gave me plenty of time to arrange the antenna layout, following the guidelines lightweight, all bands, easy to install and pre-tested with a focus on the low bands. I modified the well-proved rhombic loops we were using in El Salvador and learned much about matching vertical antennas for 40 and 80 meters. The result was 2-element verticals for 80 and for 40 and 80 meters, a vertical antenna for 160, delta loop for 30 meters, combined loops for 12-17 and 20-15-40, and a 2-element via beam for 6 to 20 meters. In June, the pandemic situation allowed us to carry out a team meeting in Thuringia with all the intended equipment and our X-files. Our job was testing the constructed antennas, the transceivers, the filter banks, the software, the interconnections, and even the power supplies of our laptops and smartphones. After 3 days, we felt well prepared for the expedition, but still unsecure what would be in October. So this is one plan, one layout of the station we wanted to use in Kosovo, and we tested in Thuringia. Our job was testing the constructed antennas and all the other things around. After 3 days, we felt prepared, well prepared for the expedition, but still unsecure what would happen in October. I think it was a good idea to simulate the expedition situation as realistic as possible, always having in mind that Murphy would be still with us. And you see, there were a lot of problems erecting the antenna, especially this folded beam antenna. So at least we got it up. In the meantime, our X-files worked out a cultural program with some excursions, and I think they had a lot of fun and some Prosecco, as far as I remember. The number of corona infections in Kosovo were permanently observed. Until September, the numbers were far below the numbers we had to notice in Germany, whatever the reasons were. With that in mind and the okay of our doctors, we booked our flight just 2 weeks before. The precautions we met were flying business class to minimize contacts, optimize the social distances, wearing masks, and to have the necessary disinfection material with us and use it, of course. The estimated day of our departure from Leipzig via Vienna to Pristina was October the 12th. And early in the morning, we boarded our machine hoping to be in Pristina at tea time. The engine was started, but after two attempts, the pilot resigned and gave up the starting procedure. Unexpected error. The luggage was unloaded and we had to leave the aircraft. Good news came 2 hours later. Lufthansa organized a taxi for us to Berlin, where our new flight to Pristina should start next morning. So we spent a comfortable night in a Berlin hotel, and it looked like this. And Lufthansa paid all. To make it short, we had a calm flight from Berlin to Vienna to Pristina, where our landlord Lead gave us a hearty welcome and arranged a perfect transfer to his house. The house with 6 rooms and a fully equipped kitchen and a workshop, this is a workshop, was situated about 20 kilometers from Pristina in a hilly area, which looked a little bit like Thuringia. And we also had a car there for our use. The garden with more than 3,000 square meters was more than sufficient for our antenna farm. On top, we also got the permission to use the neighbor gardens, which belonged to the greater family. So that was the first step of our installations. Our inside works began with removing the furniture and installing 3 working spaces. The power lines had to be changed for our needs, as well as the heating system. The transceivers, computers, filters, and the antenna lines and switches had to be interconnected and tested. Late evening, everything looked fine. No noise was to be heard. Oh, this is our antenna material. That's all we need and almost nothing more. It took us a few hours next day to build up and to test the first 4 antennas. Even though we had more than 3,000 square meters, what means 3,600 square yards for our antennas, it was a sort of puzzle to find the optimal location for the antennas to hold the mutual coupling as low as possible and to prevent stray radiation. After all, we were able to start our activities in the early afternoon with OK2PAY on 80 meter CW. Well, let's have a closer look on the antennas we were using. We had about 80 meters of fiberglass material with us. And as a first step, we built up a full-size 2-element vertical array for 80 meters and the same for 40 meters, both with single radials. The top-loaded vertical, then a top-loaded vertical for 160 meters. Numbers 3 and 4 were run big loops for 2015 and for 12 and 17 meters. The 2015 meter loop was switchable into a 40 meter vertical antenna. The construction for this is quite simple. You only need a mast, a few meters of fishing rods, and the right length of wire. To change the loop antenna into a vertical antenna, you just have to connect the 2 ends of the loop with the inner lead of the coax. The braid is connected to a quarter-wave radial, which can be left there all times. Fine-tuning can be done by changing the length of the radial. You may call this type of antenna also a corner dipole. Switching can be done in seconds by hand or by relay. And we always had a 1:1 standing wave ratio on this antenna, on the double loop for 2015, and on the double loop for 12 and 17 meters. We only had one feed point, and we only need one coax cable. The 2-element folded beam antenna for 6 and 20 meters was difficult to handle. Although we had intensive training with it at home, and it was not working satisfactorily the first week. We solved the problem the second week. The time between the 4-hour shifts was too short, and the number of helping hands was very limited for more antenna works. So we surrendered to install the intended beverage antennas for 80 and 160. We had the 2-element vertical arrays for 40 and 80 meters switchable in 2 directions, but after 3 days of using them, we found them less effective than expected. We removed them later and built up a full-size rhombic loop for 40 meters instead, which really performed outstanding, and I think it was a good decision to do that. The antennas, well, I think they look fine day and night. Oh, you see our car in the front. And this is the antenna farm at night. And here you see us after completion of the antenna works with a good beer and a pizza. And after that, in the early afternoon, our 4 shifts began. As I told you earlier, our first QSO was with a well-known OK2 Papa Alpha Yankee on 80 meter CW. The ICOM 7300s and the K3, together with 600 to 1000 watt amplifiers, they did their job in all modes. They were connected in a local network running the UCX logging software. And thanks to the solid fiberglass internet connection, we had no problems with the daily updates on ClubLock. Well, the shack was big enough for 3 operating sites, social distancing for the operators was no problem. And in addition to that, we had to operate with open doors and windows. Thanks to the electric heater and the wood-fired oven, it was quite comfortable to operate there, even with outside temperatures below 0 at night. Here you see our operating sites, and here you see the difference between old school operation and FT8 operation. In the foreground, you see DL2AMD operating, I think, on 30 meters FT8. DL2AMD will be a member of the next expedition to Swains Island, which will hopefully start in April or May next year. You see, that's old school. This is my favorite equipment, K3 and a more or less homebrew 600 watts fat amplifier. Well, as we were self-supporters, we had to visit the well-sorted supermarket from time to time and had to prepare the meals ourselves. Thanks to France DL9 GFB, we always had a richly spread table and a clean kitchen. as you see. That's, by the way, our heating system. Well, we were living quite isolated and had only a very few visitors. Two came one morning, unexpected and uninvited, with a police car. They asked us about our activities in that house, looked into the papers, looked into the rooms and the shacks. And, well, it was not easy to explain them what 6 grandfathers between 60 and 75 are doing there with the electronic equipment, and why in heaven they came just to this place in Kosovo instead of exploring the breathtaking landscape and the cultural diversity of the country. Well, I'm afraid we had no convincing arguments for them, no answer on the question, what is it good for what you are doing there? And why this very limited conversation with 59 or 599? They left us with friendly handshakes and good questions left open. One of the 14 days was reserved earlier for cultural activities, we called it. We visited the mountain area, a ski resort, and monuments which should remind people on the war between the ethnic groups in the 90s. Sorry, with that we must realize that this conflict is still there and no real solution inside. Sorry. Later, a small group of us visited Femi, Zulu 62 Fox Bravo, the other day, and were astonished at his well-equipped shack and his antenna farm. What you see is just half of the tower. He and the other club officials visited us later, were good and helpful comrades all the times. As promised, we concentrated our activities in particular on the low bands, but were more than surprised by moderate to good conditions on the higher bands, especially on 12 meters. As stated earlier, 40 meters performed outstanding. Almost 8,000 QSOs were made on this band. Impressive for us also 80 meters and 160 meters, where we had 4,000, respectively 1,600 QSOs. The relation between the modes shows us that we were preferring the traditional modes, CW and single sideband. Only 30% of our QSOs were made in digital modes, and I'm very lucky about that. Having a look on the work continent statistics shows us that North America was hard to reach, although we did our best. Europe, just in front of us, was good to work on all bands, day and night. And later, a number of hams asked us to show up in the CQ Worldwide DX contest as a good multiplier. Well, we did so and ended up with 1,000 QSOs. The total number of 33,000 QSOs is far more than people expected from us. Well, we dreamt about 30,000. I should mention that the statistic here does not show our contest QSOs and a few hundred FT8 QSOs. We had problems to load them. into the logbook program. We did it later. Well, with 6 operators, it was time. No, with 6 operators under the actual sunspot activity situation, we are more than satisfied, and we would like to thank all our QSO partners and, of course, the sponsors making the result possible. We also would like to thank our landlord Laird and his father for giving us so much support. Really nice people. Well, after 14 days, it was time for a farewell party with a fantastic meal and a few glasses beer, of course. And again, some words about the corona precautions. We all came from areas with low infection rates. In Kosovo, we were living quite isolated. We had only a very few personal contacts. We followed the local safety instructions, and of course, we never felt as heroes. We knew about the risks, and not to forget, with DL2AMD, we had a physician with us. We all returned exhausted, but with positive memories and a negative corona test. Please allow me some words about our team member and friend DL9GFB. He became a silent key at the 22nd of December, just a few weeks after returning from Kosovo. Franz was a great companion on this and many expeditions before, and he was not only that what we call everybody's darling. He also was well-known worldwide and had an excellent reputation in the DX community. We miss him very much. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the convention, and I hope to meet you from Papua New Guinea in a few days. And as you see, for further information, you may use the addresses I am publishing here. So thank you. And if you have any question, let me hear.
Thank you, Werner. I can only take my hat off you. At the time that you were doing that, the UK was just entering one of its phased lockdown times. And when you returned, we were under lockdown again. So you created a lot of excitement on the bands. I'm certainly incredibly envious of what you did and the amount of beer you seem to have drunk. I did notice on the picture with the police, there was a lot of empty cans. I hope you didn't offer those to the policeman, did you? He's not answering. Yeah, okay.
No, we had no problems with the policemen. They were very friendly. They even didn't want a bottle of beer.
Of course.
And, no, it was a nice conversation, and really many questions, also to me, left open there.
Okay.
Why do we do such things?
We often ask ourselves that, don't we? Questions? Mike, G3WPH. Let me bring you the microphone so Werner can hear you. I bet I can guess your question.
Good morning, Werner, and thank you very much for the presentation. Mike, G3WPH. I was interested in the use of your vertical double delta or double rhombic antennas. I'm interested if you've ever done any comparison with those against a regular ground plane with perhaps four radios.
Yeah, okay, Mike, thank you for the question. Well, I'm following the plans of DK7 Zulu Bravo. You may see his address here on the slide. And he said, following his measurements, there might be 1.5 or something like this, again, for the delta loop antennas. Almost the same gain as you might expect with the normal loop or square antennas. The fantastic thing is it's very easy to install. You don't need much material, and if you follow the 55 degrees at the peak and at the bottom of the antenna, you may have a 1x1, no problems on that. Even if you put two antennas into one system with one feed point.
Okay, thanks very much. And I do have a supplementary question, which is to Chris. Did you guess the question correctly?
Yes, I did. And that's because Mike and I have used the VDAs on DXpeditions and agree they're very effective. But I like the idea of opening it up for 40. I hadn't thought about that. Other questions? I have one as well. The folding hex beam, we took that to E6, didn't we? E6GG. Absolutely agree with you about how difficult it is to put up. Our problem was, because it's resonant, that we couldn't use it on any band that we were using another antenna on. So we'd hoped that we'd be able to use it, but I wonder, did you use it at the same time? Did you try two stations on one band?
No, we never had two stations on one band. Also, we had room enough for our antennas, but we only were 2 or 3 operators, so there was no need to be on the same band with our stations.
And did you find that because it's a resonant antenna, whatever band you're on, you're going to pick up RF into it?
Not in Kosovo, but we found that problem in El Salvador before, and we had a lot of problems, but we had a lot of filters there, so we were able to operate on one band with two antennas and 2 times 1 kilowatt. There was no problem there in El Salvador. But you need a lot of filtering.
Yes, I mean, that's the way around. Any last questions?
Oh, I should mention what we did in El Salvador. We were feeding 2 loop antennas on the same mast with 2 coax cables, and we didn't have any problems because the filtering was that good, so we were using the 2 antennas. I think it was a 20-meter and a 15-meter antenna on the same mast, the delta loop, but feeding with separate coax cables.
That's interesting. Whose filters were you using?
That's following, I think, DJ's Delta Golf Zero Sugar Alpha built this for us. They are heavy duty. I think they can withstand more than 1.5 kilowatt. But he passed away, so I don't know where to get them now.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I guess the last thing is good luck in P29. When do you actually get on the air there?
Well, they say the 25th. Yep. We'll start our flights the 23rd, and there's a long flight. We're going to Qatar, and from Qatar to Singapore, and from Singapore to our islands there in Papua.
Well, we look forward to seeing you there. And once again, thanks very much for not just this presentation, but actually putting on a DXpedition when most of us were locked up at home. Quick round of applause, please. Thank you.